Let's find Jesus in Genesis chapter 1. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." And if we go to John chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was in the beginning with God." And if we go to John chapter 1, verse 14, it says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld His glory, the glory as of the begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." So Jesus is the Word. He is the living Word. And then if we go to chapter 1 in Genesis, verse 3 through 5, it says, "Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it." Jesus is often referred to as the light of the world. His light shines through the darkness and is not overcome by it. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 6, it says, "Then God said, 'Let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and let it divide the waters from the waters.'" If we go over to Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 12, it says, "He has made the earth by His power. He has established the world by His wisdom, and has stretched out the heavens at His discretion." Jesus is that wisdom. He was with God when He created the heavens and the earth. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 7, we see that God says, "He made a firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so." And if we go to Proverbs chapter 8, and we look at verse 22, 23, and 27, it reads, "The Lord possessed me," this is wisdom talking, "at the beginning of His way, before His works of old. I have been established from everlasting, from the beginning, before there was ever an earth." And this is verse 27, "When He prepared the heavens, I was there. When He drew a circle on the face of the deep." So Jesus was always with God from the very beginning, before anything was ever created. Jesus, or wisdom, was there with Him. Jesus is also in Genesis chapter 1, verse 11. "Then God said, 'Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on earth.' And it was so." If we go over to Luke chapter 6, verse 44, Jesus is speaking and says, "For every tree is known by its own fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they gather grapes from a bramble bush." Jesus is using an analogy comparing the fruit that mankind produces and the kind of fruit mankind finds depending on where he looks. Jesus uses God's creation to make a connection. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.'" If we go to Psalms 100, verse 3, it says, "Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who has made us, and not we ourselves. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture." Jesus is often referred to as the Good Shepherd. He says, "I am the Good Shepherd who gives His life for the sheep." Jesus says He knows His sheep. And then finally in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, it says, "Then God saw everything that He had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day." And if we go to Psalm 104, verse 24, it says, "O Lord, how manifold are your works! In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions." So we can thank God and praise God and Jesus for everything we see and don't see. I know this was very quick, but if you have any findings of your own of Jesus in Genesis chapter 1, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. Thank you for listening.